We've got a few last-minute additions to a bill that we're having to get straight back here. But Senator Setzler, would you lead us in prayer?
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you so much. Lord God, you're the giver of all good things. We just pray that we would humble ourselves before you today and we would do your work. And just pray that you'd bless all that we do, bless our deliberations, those for and against, and that we would glorify you in all that we do. We pray this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. All right, we will start off with HB 81. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Working off of LC 491061.
That is the version I have in front of me, Mr. Chairman. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is a bill that we passed last year out of this committee, got out of rules, just didn't make it across the finish line on sine die, so we just didn't get called for a vote. But basically what we're doing with this bill, there is a grant program out there now that's available to low wealth school systems, and low wealth is based on your SPLOST collections per FTE, and if you're in the bottom 25% of far as property value per FTE, you qualify for this grant. Or if you consolidate in two schools, you qualify for this grant. And what this allows is school systems that's not able, based on SPLOST collections, to be able to build a new facility. This is a grant that the state provides to these systems is in the bottom 25%. The few changes we made to hopefully be able to help some other people and add some certainty to these, where if you qualify, if you're in the bottom 25% this year, next year you might not be, but we added if you're in the bottom 25% in the last 3 years. So once you qualify, then that gives you some time to plan. Also, we put some guardrails around if you're consolidating two schools. The schools had to be at least 35 years old. We had some schools that were consolidating and replacing schools that might not be but 15 years old, so taking advantage of the system. So we put some guardrails on that. And then the meat of the bill, what we're doing, once a system's needs have been met, they will roll off of that list for 10 years and allow another school system then to qualify. Right now there's about 45 school systems that qualify for this grant. So, but once the system needs have been met, it allows, say, number 46 then would be, qualify the next year. So that's what we're doing with this grant. It's a great program, and it's helped a lot of low wealth systems to be able to afford new facilities for their kids. So, and that's what we're doing, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this bill forward. We did vet this bill last year. It's a good bill. We also had it vetted for a second time by my illustrious chairman, Senator Steele, over here last week, I believe it was. So no further testimony we'll take on it today. But any questions from the committee?
Thank you for bringing this. I just had a quick question. You may have covered this before, and I apologize if I missed it. But do the counties have to be collecting SPLOST to be eligible for these grants?
Yes, you have to. You base it off the SPLOST collection. That's one of the requirements. You got to be in the bottom 25% for SPLOST collections, and you bottom 25% for.
So if you're a county that is not collecting SPLOST,
you would not qualify.
Okay,
That's one of the requirements.
Thank
yes.
you.
This is not a question that would represent hazing, but I do have a question for you. What system in the state has the lowest ad valorem property tax value per FTE in the state?
I could find that out. I don't know that off the top of my head.
I believe it's Paulding County.
So,
even though it's a big county, they have so many kids and their property tax is still so low. Right. They have the lowest per state. So it's not only extremely rural areas, it's areas that don't have a lot of money per student.
Yeah.
So
thank you for that. That is true.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. We're going to take a quick recess. Ledge Council's telling me this language has already been adopted in another bill, 318?
It has. It was added to a bill, but then it was called for me to present last week. I'm glad to do that. It has, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Hold just one
That
second.
is true.
I have a question, but maybe new if it's already, but I mean, maybe I'll still ask it.
Yeah, I just hope the other two measures it was added to, gets across the finish line, doesn't get vetoed. That'd be the only reason to do this.
So they haven't, it didn't actually pass on a bill last year.
Not that actually, it was passed earlier this year, come back to an agree to the House on House Bill 318. But now it's waiting on the governor's signature, is where that's at. There was 3 measures added to that bill, so hopefully
So
there's
you've
not
got
an
other
issue. It
components
doesn't
in
get-
318?
Sir?
There's other components?
There's 2 other components. Scott Hilton had a measure and Tim Fleming had a measure, and I can't speak to exactly what those measures did, but hopefully there's not an issue where it gets vetoed, but this would measure be able to stand on its own if we passed it as is.
Okay.
Can I ask my question? So, Senator Setzler's comment made me wonder. So if you've got rural areas that maybe don't have a large tax base, but it sounds, or maybe some other counties that just don't in general. Then it sounds though, based on what you were saying, that some counties where that's not really necessarily the case, just have a really low millage, or they've set it, can you, it sort of seems like you shouldn't incentivize people just, okay, you want to, yeah.
No, it's per
Okay.
FTE, based on what they can collect per SPLOS, per full-time equivalent student. They have so many students, but their SPLOS collections is so low, by the time you divide it by the FTE,
Okay, that makes
collection-
sense. It was when you said they've kept their taxes so low that they still qualify,
No,
where I was like, wait,
they're
are we?
not- they're not.
Okay.
Sullivan County has an all residential and rural tax base, but they have so many students. The amount of money they collect in SPLOST and the amount of money they collect for property tax per student is actually lower than rural areas because they have so many kids. The wealthiest county in the state for property tax collections is actually Burke County.
Interesting.
Because
All
they
right.
have few students that have nuclear power rates. So it's just, it's.
Yeah, and the system, they have to, then they have to obligate 5 years of their SPLOS collections toward this to be a requirement to receive the grant as well.
So they're thinking, yeah, so it's not like it can be gamed that
No,
easily.
no,
but
you're-
yeah,
you're
I mean,
not- you're
or
not
it would not
gaming.
be worth it
No.
anyway, even if you could. But, okay, thank you. Just,
It's a diverse mix of counties that run.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, since it's not been signed into law yet, and you've got other measures on that other bill, we can proceed with this. It's my understanding that if the governor signs one or the other, we're good, but also if he signs both, they can redact one or the other based on timing, so.
Yes.
Yes, there wouldn't be
Thank you.
redundancy in the code section.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move a motion to pass. Yeah. LC 473040, I'm sorry. HB 81, LC 49, 1061.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to pass. All in, or I guess any further comments? Seeing none. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
And Chairman, Senator Sims has agreed to carry it on the Senate floor.
Thank you.
Thank you. I promoted you. I got called speaker this morning, so I thought I'd promote you this morning. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You need more time?
No, we can do 987 because
We're going to ask all kinds of
Okay.
questions about 318.
What's that?
Ansley's bringing
Every
copies.
complex.
Okay, good deal.
You got one more step, you did well.
We're going to jump around on the agenda a bit, waiting on some copies to come in, but we'll move to HB 987. Representative Cannon.
Yes, sir. All right, just took the steps really quickly so I can catch my breath, but,
Nice of you to join us.
yes, sir. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This morning I bring you House Bill 987, LC 491738S. And I talked through this bill. It's got some complex parts of it, but I'll try to run through it fairly quickly and keep it as simple as possible. So most of y'all are familiar with local government raising or lowering millage rates, and in most cases, when that happens, local property values or assessments will rise or fall. And in response to that, the local government on an annual basis adjust the millage rate up or down so that enough revenues from taxes are generated to cover expenses. So that is basically what this bill does with respect to eligibility for equalization grants. The current threshold for state equalization grant funding was set 5 years ago in 2019 at 14 mills. Now, the basic purpose of equalization, the threshold for equalization, is to ensure that a local school system is taxing their local citizens for their share of K through 12 education dollars. And for 2019, the General Assembly set the baseline millage rate for equalization eligibility at 14 mills. However, there are two components for determining taxation at the local level. One is the millage rate, and two is the value of property, which is called the tax digest. Since 2019, as most of you know, we've seen taxable values on property, the tax digest, rise in some cases significantly. But there has been no adjustment to the 14 mil threshold to accommodate for these increases over the past 5 years. In other words, there's been no rollback on this millage rate threshold. So if a local school system, and there are many throughout the state, all across the state, is hovering around the 14 mil threshold and they have experienced steady increases in property values, and as a result, the school system is able to both A, contribute the same level of local dollars towards education as in previous years, or in cases more if the digest has gone up, and B, has the ability to lower their millage rate, they can now stand to lose their equalization funding if they drop below the 14 mil threshold set back in 2019. As a result, there are school systems throughout the state who, even though they are able to go lower, are remaining at the required threshold of 14 mils because they don't want to put their equalization dollars at risk. And in doing so, they are passing on fairly substantial tax increases to their citizens every year. So what this bill does is essentially take into account the increased property values we have seen across the state over the past 5 years, and it lowers the 14 mil threshold set 5 years ago to a new proposed threshold of 10 mils. The bill basically takes our millage rate and lowers it to accommodate for increased property assessments. It's important to note that all school systems that currently qualify for equalization dollars are above the new proposed 10 mil threshold. This bill does not address equalization or the formula for equalization. It's more of a tax digest bill that addresses rising property values over the last 5 years. That's pretty much the summary of the bill. I apologize for the extra level of detail, but that's kind of it summed up in a nutshell. And I appreciate the committee hearing my bill this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for any questions.
Senator Dolezal.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing the bill. Good morning.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate what you're doing here. I'm wondering how you arrived at the 10 mil number. As I understand it, there's not a single school district in the state that has done a 4 mil rollback.
That's correct.
So I would kind of have a series of questions on this. One, how many counties that were above 14 that would have qualified before are now below 12? I think the answer is 0. How many were below 14 before but now will be captured in the 10? That's really my bigger question. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. So the 10 was a compromise figure. It gave some time and space for school systems that are at 14 now to give them a couple years, 3 or 4 or 5 years to get down to 10 if their digest continues to improve. So yes, if we get to 10, if school systems start getting to that 10 level again in the next couple of years, we probably should be back here discussing lowering it again. But depending on the economy, the digest figure could lower, and school systems would have to raise their millage rate to accommodate for the lower digest. They're also part of the provision in the bill gives a clawback provision to the state. So right now there is no provision in the statute that penalizes a school system for going below the 14 mil threshold. So you've got some school systems who are doing that and are still receiving the equalization. You've got some school systems that are remaining at 14 because they're rewarded about not receiving their equalization, but they can do it anyway. They can lower the millage rate, but they can't because they're worried about equalization funding. So if they're not lowering the millage rate, they're passing on those tax increases to their citizens because the digest is increasing. So the 4 mil is kind of a buffer there, allows school systems that are at 14 who want to roll back and can roll back to do so. And if the property digest of the state and that individual county continues to increase over the next 3 to 5 years, it'll give them some more space to continue to roll back.
I get that. My concern is that my county's a donor county.
Sure.
And so we're paying for these other counties. And we haven't done a 4 mil rollback. And so my concern would be is that we're allowing significant rollbacks in some counties, whereas other counties can't afford to do it because of what the 5 mil share is for us. I mean, it's tens of millions of dollars.
Right.
The one thing I don't think that that I heard from you, though, was how many counties are we talking about that were below 14, and you may not know this, and that's fair, but that were below 4. How many new counties are going to be introduced into the equalization?
Well, no
because
county
of this?
that currently receives equalization is below 10. So any county that gets equalization has some time, if they can roll back, to do so. Only if they choose to do so at the individual county school board level.
Yeah, I get that. So what I'm asking, I think that maybe I'm not being clear, and I apologize. I'm trying to figure out how to best ask this question. How many are below 14 currently that are not eligible for equalization, that will become eligible for equalization because of this change? In other words, the intent, I think, of the original bill is to say, hey, the wealthy counties can only subsidize so much of the less wealthy counties.
Right.
So you've got to have some skin in the game locally.
That's correct.
You are essentially conceivably lowering the skin in the game, I think reflective of the larger tax digest, which all of us have. So my concern is that you're rolling it back 30%. And is that going to capture, from what I can tell in legislation, it's never been that low in a couple decades.
Well,
so does that make...
Yes, it does. So this does not change the formula for equalization. If you don't receive equalization now, this bill will not change the formula so that you can receive equalization.
Unless you're at 11 mils.
That's not correct. So if your school system does not receive equalization and the formula calculated in the next couple of years still determines that you're not eligible, you don't get equalization. This doesn't change the equalization formula. It's just basically we're trying to account for the digest increase and say across the state and subsequently in individual counties that the digest in 2019 was around $400 billion. All right. So that school system was taxing their individual citizens on a $400 billion tax digest, figure at 14 mils. Now the digest 5 years later is $700 billion. So the pull from the local school system at $700 billion times 14 is a lot higher than $400 billion times 14.
I get that, but you would agree that statewide that percentage is largely in metro.
I don't agree because in my county we've had a pretty significant increase. I think across the board you've seen increases at 25% in some cases. For example, in Elbert County, they were trying to go below the 14 mil threshold. They didn't because they were worried about equalization.
I get that. Here's my question: if you're at 12 mils today, do you qualify for equalization?
It depends based on the formula. I have a whole sheet here of all 180 school systems that if you qualify for equalization now, and you're at 12 mils, under this law, you couldn't take equalization dollars. So if you go below 10, if we enact this law and the new threshold is 10, and you go below that, in other words, if the school system drops below that threshold, we pull back 25% of your equalization dollars. So that's an incentive to keep you above 10. There is no provision in the code that does that now. So that's kind of like a safety mechanism for any school system that drops below 10.
I thought that the provision in the code right now is in line 24 that says that if you're below 14 today, I'm not talking about if your bill passes.
That's correct. Yeah.
So
There's no provision in state law that penalizes a school system for going below 14. So you have some school systems that qualify for equalization that are dropping below the 14 mil threshold, lowering their local property taxes, and still receiving equalization dollars.
okay.
So this is designed to stop that, but stop it at 10. And the drop from 14 to 10 is only designed to accommodate for the tax digest increase over the past 5 years. In other words, we make a county roll back their millage rate every year. You have to have 3 public hearings and announce in the newspaper, have certain signage in the local legal organ. But the state has not done that for this particular issue, and that's what I'm trying to accomplish.
Senator Setzler.
Thank you. Appreciate your bringing the detailed answer.
Yes, sir.
The wise old radio host said once, first let's seek clarity, and then we can move towards agreement. I don't even know where I agree with this, but I want to get clarity on it, and I think that's part of where Senator Dolezal was going.
Yes, sir.
We either have, bills are either increase, tax cut, or tax shift. We're not changing, this isn't raising more revenue from the state. This is an issue of the pie is one pie, the pie's size is fixed. What this is addressing, is it not, is how we cut the pie and who gets the different cuts. Is that fair to say?
I would say that an additional detail is that some school systems get an E-lost. In other words, only 8 in the state qualify. So they're at record sales tax receipts, and the sales tax is supposed to offset your property tax. And in some of these school systems, they're getting the E-lost. The E-lost is putting downward pressure on the property tax millage rate. And because of this law, we're saying that you ought to be able to reduce your millage rate below 14 if you can because of E-lost. But if you do that, we're going to penalize you and not give you, in some cases, millions of dollars.
But we're saying, lots of things are being said, because you've got E-lost, you have local taxes, you have the state income tax that funds the general fund, and the 5 mil share, all the things that the Senator referred to. But ultimately what this is doing is it's saying, just for clarity, and it may be something we want to do, but I want to be clear about it.
Mm-hmm.
What we're saying is, if you're a county that wants to roll back your millage rate, you want to still keep drawing the same amount out of the state dollars.
That's correct.
So let's be clear. So what this is saying is, we as a county, our digest is growing in a healthy way. We want to roll back our property taxes to lower taxes on our local citizens at the local level, but to replace the gap that we would lose in revenue, we want to, because of how we qualify in the percentages here, we still want to have the state, all the counties, whether they roll back their taxes or not, fund us at the same level. That's what this is. To me, this is what I think the senator from the 24th was getting to. 24th, 23rd, 27th, sorry. I'm still learning that. Is getting at is, it seems to be that we're trying to allow counties in that range to lower their taxes, but still draw down from the overall state effort the same amount of money. Is that not right?
Partially, I would argue that in 2019, a school system based on 14 mills, and their digest at the time was drawing a certain amount of local funds. Mm-hmm. All right. Fast forward to 2024, and you're still at 14 mills, and the digest has gone up considerably since 2019. That school system is pulling a lot more funds locally than it was in 2019 mm-hmm. because of the increased digest. So if you look at what's contributed in terms of dollar amounts in 2019 from a local school board, I can't guarantee it, but almost 99.9% repeating that the budget is higher, a lot higher now from local dollars than it was in 2019. So the intent is you're still pulling the same amount of money or more in some cases from your local taxes, property taxes, and sales taxes. It's just the digest is raised and the millage has not been lowered to accommodate that digest increase.
But my question, though, is some get to pull out of the pot and some don't. Some are net donors and some are net drawers from the pot. So what this does is people who would no longer be drawing money out of the state pot would be able to draw out of the state pot. Or if they're drawing out of the pot now, they would continue to, whereas they otherwise would not be qualified to if they roll their millage back.
That's correct.
But people who are paying in the state pot, this becomes a net shift from payers to folks who right now are drawers out, who want to continue to be able to draw even though they lower their taxes back on their citizens, and trying to understand how that what incentives this creates.
Well, I do think it's more of an intent. The intent is to pull, the intent of the millage-based threshold is to ensure the local tax base contributes to K-12 education. And then the formula for equalization is not, it's three-part, formula, but that's not part of this bill. And that's a separate topic. All I'm saying is that if the school system can go lower because of E-loss, because of rising property values, and because the state set this thing 4 or 5 years ago, we ought to have some accommodation for a school system that can go lower, that can lower its property taxes because it has money available to do so. The state shouldn't prevent them from doing that.
Right, but I guess my concern is if this were an across-the-board incentive for every district to roll their tax rates back on their citizens,
Right.
so we incentivize everybody.
There's a way to do that. I mean, the locals can do that. It's just the equalization formula is not part of my discussion. It can be part of the discussion in a separate bill, but it's not part of this bill.
It's, again, I know the Center for 27 has some questions. It's just, to me, it creates a circumstance where right now, the people who are paying, the net shift in the overall percentage burden of funding will be from these counties to people who are paying into the system. And I don't know if the Senator from the 42nd wants to increase the percentage that her district's paying because other folks have chosen to lower their taxes. I'll leave it. I'll leave that to the Senator from the 42nd to decide for herself. But
You can use names.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you. I'm a freshman senator. I'm still learning these things.
I'm a freshman, man. I see.
Chairman, I just want to make sure that I understand what your bill is doing, because I asked the question, if a system today is at 12% millage rate, then they're not qualified?
At 12, some are going below the 14 mil threshold and still receiving the equalization.
Okay.
That's correct.
So
I'm trying to stop that. But if we go to 10, if the law is adopted and we go to 10, and the school system can go below 10, and they have the ability, and they go below it, they get penalized by, we take 25% of their equalization funds from them. Right now, there's no provision in the law that does that if they go below 14.
So right now, line 14 says that a qualified local school system is defined as any local school system, and then we get A, B, and C is what you're changing.
That's correct.
And C puts these minimum thresholds in place for millage rates, and that's changed from 2015 until 2019. It went from 12
to-
mills up to 14.
That's correct.
14 is where it sits today. You
Yes,
want to
sir.
take it from 14 to 10.
That's correct.
Today, if I am at 12, what don't I have access to that I will have access to under this change that takes it to 10?
Well, at 12 mils, you should not be getting equalization.
Okay, that's what I asked you earlier, and
Yeah.
you said that wasn't true.
No,
So-
well, it is true because there's no provision in law that penalizes the school for going below 14. So we're adding that into this bill. So if you.
So what does Section C do today? Before you've changed it, what does it do today?
It just sets a threshold is all it does
A threshold for what?
for receiving equalization.
Okay.
There's no penalization for if you go below that 14 number. It just stops. The code stops there. There's no provision that says if you go below 14, the state will do X. So what we're adding is if you go below 10, we're going to take up to 25% of your equalization dollars from you as an incentive to not go below 10.
Okay. Okay, I understand. Thank you for that. That gives me
Yes,
a little
sir.
bit of clarity. What I still don't understand is why that's in code today if it's not doing anything. Are you telling me that the qualified local school system definition, even though C is part of that it doesn't really matter whether your millage rate's at 9?
Well-
And if that's the case, then why do we need to change it?
Well, like I said, there's no provision now. Everything after line 26 is new code.
I get all that. I'm talking about lines, what is the current use of lines 19 through 24?
It just sets that minimum threshold to be eligible for equalization. That's all it does.
Okay, so if you're not eligible, you don't get it.
That's correct.
So if you're at 12 mills today, you do not get equalization.
You can because there's no penalty for dropping below the 14 mil threshold. So if you're a school system that is dropped below 14 and you're separately eligible for equalization, the state has no clawback to say you're
So
doing
if
the
you
wrong.
started above 14, you go down.
That's correct.
Okay, so if you've always been at 12,
If you've been at 12, if you've been at 12 or 10, so, for example, Gilmore County is at 10.24, no equalization.
Okay.
Greene County, 10.728, no equalization.
okay.
Fannin
so
County,
So, great. So taking the first one you mentioned, not eligible today, eligible under this bill.
negative.
No, okay.
A separate equalization is separate than this. So the formula for Gilmore County could be calculated in the future where they could receive equalization. If they're above 10 mills, they could get equalization dollars.
Okay. I promise you I'm not trying to be difficult. I just genuinely do not understand.
I told you it'd be a
what it
complex
is to
topic.
say.
Yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm going to call up a good friend, Buddy Cosley with Gale, This gentleman has helped me out quite a bit and has forgotten more about education than any of us will ever know, I believe. If you could, yeah, please.
Someone to the rescue.
Good morning. So, may I, Mr. Chairman, listening to Senator Dolezal and Senator Setzler, I certainly don't want to speak for the representative, but I'll try to validate both of the senators because there is some confusion. And I actually, honestly think, we've studied and tracked this bill, I actually think the representative is trying to solve the problem that you kind of see in the bill. So the threshold currently was set for 14. And first of all, when you think about equalization, it has nothing to do with SPLOST. All equalization is they figure out how many kids per meal you have, and then they rank you. And if you're in the bottom portion that receives that funding, so no new system that doesn't qualify for equalization A will get equalization regardless of their millage. So if they're at 12 and they don't qualify for millage, they won't. If they're at 14, they won't qualify at 12. It doesn't matter because they're not poor enough per meal. Two, Senator Dolezal is exactly correct. It is confusing that the bill would state that the threshold is 14 and then nothing happens to a system if they go under 14. However, what most of the systems are interpreting the bill to mean is they can't go below 14, and so they could lose $2 million in equalization grant by giving the taxpayers a $500,000 tax break. So what they're doing is, because of their interpretation of the law, they won't lower their millage through 14 because they believe the law says that they will lose $2 million, let's say, of equalization just to give a $500,000 tax break to the systems. So it is correct that it conceivably a system who qualifies for equalization, who is at 12 mills, would qualify for equalization. But I believe the state representative is sharing with you is that very few, if any, school systems are sitting at 12. So even though there's a theoretical impact, there is no literal impact to the system. So basically what this bill would do is it would reestablish sanity because it would create a clawback that would make it very clear. If you go below the threshold, you will lose part of your equalization funds, which is where the current bill, and I agree, I don't understand why the bill would say your threshold is 14, but there would be no penalty for it. I don't think anybody understands that, so I think the state representative is trying to fix that for you. And the systems are actually trying to do honestly right by you and right by the law because most of the systems won't budge below 14 because they'll lose way more money by doing so, losing their equalization, than the tax break would give them. What I believe he would be, the author would be solving is that more systems would be likely, they can afford now to lower their tax millage rates, giving the local taxpayers a break, but also sparing their equalization, which they've earned because of the poverty wealth that they have per mill. So, I mean, Senator Dolezal, I would say that you are absolutely right. It makes no sense why there would be a threshold, and then there might be some that qualify, but we think there are very few, and this bill would fix that problem from now on.
What he said.
Senator Setzler.
So, the calculation is, some counties were, 40 years ago quite poor, and they've, for reasons, they've, even relative to their peers across the state, stepped up in relative wealth. So if a county's stepping up in relative wealth, that's really the purpose of this whole program is that we're able to take the average wealth of the state and spread it evenly because we have a constitutional duty to give every kid an education, no matter whether they live in a poor county or not. That's the purpose of this. But if a county's stepping up in their relative wealth, isn't that the purpose of all this? That they've moved up, and part of their duty is they've moved up in relative wealth. Their ability to draw from the pot starts to go away. I mean, isn't that how it's supposed to work?
It has a mathematical impact, so it is conceivable that a system's millage wealth could increase so much that they no longer qualify for equalization, which is why it's recalculated each year. So that will help in one sense because if they blow up like let's say Henry County did in the past from a rural to an urban area, then they could be out of that qualification. On the second though, if they still qualify for equalization, it may drop them down on the list somewhat. But they could still, this bill would incentivize them if they start to get down to the 14th level to say, we can afford to go down to 12 and a half mills. That's good for the local taxpayers. And I think that's what this bill solves, is we have a lot of local taxpayers who are looking at their boards saying, hey, roll back the millage. The boards have had a hard time relating to their taxpayers. If we do that, we'll lose $1.5 million and then have to raise the mill. And the taxpayers don't understand equalization. What I believe the author is trying to do is kind of allay that conversation to almost where it's not even an issue anymore, because as Senator Dolezal has pointed out, and the state representative has pointed out, most people are not even close to 10 mills, and it could take years to get there. So what we just tried to bring clarity to is that some of the issues that Senator Dolezal has seen in terms of the threshold now would be in law, and there would be a penalty.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. This bill was also vetted by my esteemed chairman, so there'll be no Chairman Steele. Yeah,
You weren't here.
I'm trying to get him a name badge, but yeah. So no further testimony will be taken on this. Any questions, or chair would entertain a motion? We got a motion to pass and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed?
I don't know how to vote, Mr. Chairman. I don't understand the issue. I'll vote against it. I think I'm a no. I may be wrong.
Passes 7-1. Yeah.
I'll keep working with you, Senator. Promise you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you're ready. Yeah.
In-house rules at 10. Did you want to try to get that? And you could have.
We'll just see if we get, it'll take a little while for them, and I'll just run down there whenever I can. Yeah. All right, we'll jump back in order. We're going to hear HB 282. Representative Maynard.
And if you'll tell them that what we're passing out is what we're hearing.
Okay. And we've got a substitute that's being passed around that we're going to work off of. And then we've got a committee member going to be offering an amendment. You doing well today?
I am, thank you, Chair.
So we'll be working off of LC 520561S.
Yes. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Committee, for allowing me to present HB 282. Since this bill has passed, there have been a few additions to it that I think are great additions to the bill that have been presented to me, and the chairman has also seen these amendments, as well as Chairman Payne, who is going to be carrying the bill for me. This bill, for those that do not know how House Bill 282 originally passed out of the House, this bill is a career readiness bill. I will start with that. This bill simply is a Department of Education bill that says we are trying to get children in grades 6 through 12 ready for the workforce. They have created a curriculum already for it, and if you look on line 68, it goes into effect on July 1, 2024, because the Career Readiness Program is already available. And this bill was also endorsed by the Chamber for being a good addition to trying to help Georgia's workforce. To start with the changes, the first one in Section 1, Some of you may be asking yourself on line 21, what is Title 36 of the United States Code? Those patriotic organizations are things like the Boy Scouts. They are, nothing is controversial on that list if you were to Google it. Just want to put that out there. The other thing that I want to bring your attention to is on line 27. This simply says that organizations like the Boy Scouts of America or the Girl Scouts of America can use facilities at the request of the local school system during non-instructional time. Section 2 is part of the Founding Philosophy and Principles Act, which is already in code. And this says in grades 9 through 12, the state budget is hefty. And we're basically saying in this amendment that let's start educating children on the state budget. And let's do that with an interactive budget simulator as well as an interactive receipt. So children can simply understand where their taxpayer dollars are going to. For Section 4, this bill also passed favorably and unanimously in the House Education Committee. This bill is an English for speakers of other languages portion, and we had parents from all over all over the state of Georgia come, sometimes as far as 4 hours away, in support of this bill. This portion of the bill is really for thinking about children with special needs. Imagine being in an IEP meeting and not having access to an interpreter. The DOE also spoke in the House Education Committee. These interpretation services are already paid for at the federal level. The only thing that this bill does is says, hey, let's make sure that local school systems have some rules and regulations in place to access these interpretation services for families, and that is the bill. It's a lot of different code sections, but all of the code sections are for the purpose of helping students either in the workforce, helping children with special needs, or helping children understand civics and taxes better. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the author?
Great, thank you. I haven't, thank you, Representative Maynor. Just trying to get up to speed because, this just got passed out and hadn't had an opportunity to look at it. But this, first of all, on Section 1, now I think you said something like they can use it. It looks to me like you're saying shall give priority or somebody, if it's not your language. What does that mean versus, allowing them to? And does that create any issues for school districts that may have a lot of demands on those facilities?
And so if you look at page 2, line 29, if the school board, say they are busy, right? Say they do have a lot of requests, this bill just says, well, let the organization know in writing why.
Yeah, I did read that. Thank you. I'm just wondering how that intersects with the other language on 25 in terms of shall give priority.
And so we're saying that this is America, and patriotism and American values based on the Constitution are valuable. And when it comes to civics organizations, let's make sure that we're putting civics organizations based on the U.S. Code as a priority versus, let's say, if a for-profit organization wants to have an activity on the school premises. So we're just trying to give preference to what the United States government has already established in Title 36.
Senator Steele?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Why would we not, in that case, just say youth groups listed in Title 36? Because the term patriotic society, I think, in this title includes a bunch of fantastic organizations. Some I might personally take exception to, but it's a long list that seems to.
Are you looking at Part B for organizations in Title 36?
I'm looking at, no, Part A.
Okay, so if you go to Part B for organizations in the title code, for example, one is the American Historical Association.
Right.
And so that may not necessarily be a youth group. And so I think if we say youth groups, then we're limiting the civics portion of it.
But this is, if I may, this is about just using the facilities at a school that the local school generally today would determine or not anyway. I don't understand why, and I understand youth groups, which is why I was trying to separate that out. In Section A, line 20, it says means a youth group, but then when you get to Section B, it just says shall give priority to any of the organizations listed under the Patriotic Society definition under Title VI. So I'm trying to determine, are we really trying to do this for everybody, or are we focused on youth groups in our K-12 schools?
Great question. I'll answer, and then I'm going to also defer to the chairman, as well as I see Mr. Walker in the back nodding his head. He may have something else to add. But when organizations go to local school systems and say, hey, I would like to use this facility, that could be any adult organization currently. It can be a youth organization. It can be a veteran association. There's no preference established right now. And so this bill, by not saying youth, if we change a preference to youth groups here, I would think that we would have to change it elsewhere too, to what local school systems are already doing. But I'll refer to the chairman just simply because it wasn't my original amendment, and there may be other reasons that I have just explained.
Yeah, no, you answered it well. And then too, like I said, on line 28, not like I said, but on line 28, the school board, they still have the right to deny. They just have to do it in writing. So they still have the ultimate control.
Ten?
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me ask you this, and again, just trying to look up things quickly. It says that the Office of Civil Rights enforces the Boy Scouts of America Equal Access Act in public schools. LEAs and SEAs that receive federal funds made available through the Department of Education. Under the Boy Scouts Act, no such public school, LEA, or SEA that provides an opportunity for one or more outside youth or community groups to meet on school premises shall deny equal access or a fair opportunity to meet any group officially affiliated with the Boy Scouts of America, or any other youth group listed in Title 36. So I don't understand the point of the bill, because it already is federal law.
What codes? I don't know what code section you're talking about.
This is the U.S. code.
I mean, it's the Boy Scouts of America Equal Access Act.
So,
That's already federal law.
So I'm going to have to defer to council because I'm only within the code section of 20-2-12.
I'm reading this on the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights webpage, the Boy Scouts of America Equal Access Act.
Okay, so I think I still want to defer potentially. You are singling out Boy Scouts of America, but this is for any of the patriotic groups listed in Title 36.
So then my question is, since Boy Scouts are already covered, what groups are we actually talking about? Because the only one listed here is Boy Scouts of America and Girl Scouts of America, or United States.
So if you look at it back up to line 20, where it says Patriotic Society, means youth group. So when it's referred to again on 25, that's what it means, that the priority would be given to the youth groups within that code section.
Okay, I think I know what you're saying. I'm just saying, my point is simply that we don't know what we're talking about in terms of what these groups are, simply because the only ones listed are already covered under federal law, and so it just, I would like to know what they all are, and we simply may not have time for me to do that research currently, seeing as I just saw this, which is fine. I mean, I just won't vote for it. Thank you.
Was there a particular group listed under the Patriotic Society Code that concern you?
I haven't had the opportunity to look at it, so I couldn't tell you.
Okay. If you were to Google Title 36, they all pop up.
Because that's the way the definition.
Yeah, I think my colleague found it, but I mean, I don't really need to do this research on the fly right this second. It's fine. I don't think if I vote no, it's okay.
Okay.
I mean,
I hope you vote yes.
Any further comments?
yeah, I think it is.
Senator Steele?
Thank you, Representative. I just want to note for the record that on the list of organizations under the U.S. government organizations involved under Patriotic and National, referenced in Title 36, one group that I'm particularly fond of, and I just want to make sure that we're recognizing, maybe we consider a friendly amendment on this, is the Polish Legion of American Veterans and the Theodore Roosevelt Association. Are you members of either of those groups?
No, but you know what? I think you make a great point. Some of the other organizations are the Frederick Douglass Memorial and Historical Association, the Jewish War Veterans of the U.S., Little League Baseball, Marine Corps League. It truly is not a controversial list, which is why I started from the very beginning of, if you want to Google the organizations, I don't think that anybody would think that any of these organizations are considered controversial.
I think the Daughters of the Union Veterans of the Civil War of 1861 to 1865 might differ. I just want to make a point of that.
We'll leave that up to the federal government.
This is all federal law, so I'm a little confused.
Any further comments or questions?
That was valid.
No? Senator Setzler?
I would say, at the appropriate time, I would like to be recognized to offer an amendment, and at the chair's pleasure, whenever I can present the substance of that, I'll be glad to do that. Mr. Chair, even before I offer the amendment, can I speak to it, or you want to wait till I offer the amendment and speak to it then?
No, you can go ahead and speak to it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you guys have before you AM 490160. Even though it's not the appropriate time to offer this as an amendment, I'm not making a motion. I'm just explaining. Speaking to the author and others, what this does is there's some language in 282 that speaks to appropriations and funding, and this is what this does is this amendment is permissive. Currently in our code in 20-2-55, it requires the health care benefits that are paid by school board, by boards of education for school board members. It prohibits, even if the school district wants to cover the health care costs, not just for the school board member themselves, but also their family, it's prohibited in current code from that happening. So if you serve on city council in Decatur or Ackworth, then it's a city decision whether the city pays the council members' health care benefits, or if they also want to be able to cover the full family benefits as an option. for some strange reason, as prohibited for school board members. Currently, statute says school board members may only have their individual benefits covered, and even if the school board wants to cover the benefits for family members, they may not. By striking on line 22 of this amendment, and all cost for any coverage for family members, it allows districts that want to, as part of their compensation package for school board members, to cover the the cost of health care for family members in addition to just the school board member. It's permissive, doesn't require it, but it allows it. Glad to take questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions from the committee?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you, Senator Setzler. What, where did this pop up from? Like, was it on another bill? Did you have it as a separate bill?
No, it was brought to me during session, and I didn't file as a separate bill. It was a little late in the process, but I thought it was something that I perceived this to be more of a cleanup kind of issue than a issue by itself, so I thought it was appropriate. We've got a bill that deals with appropriations and such things. I thought it'd be a time to offer it. The authors check with the stakeholders in the House, wouldn't have an issue with this being added on, so if it went across as an agree, it wouldn't hurt the underlying bill. But the broader question is, should we prohibit by law school districts that want to, as part of their compensation, they have pay and benefits at modest levels usually, if they say they want to have school board members' families to be covered as an option, should they be prohibited by state law from doing it? Currently, state law prohibits that for some strange reason.
Yeah, that is strange.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any further comments, questions?
Going back to the committee sub, section 5, we didn't talk through that one. Can we just talk through that? This is about taxpayer, web-based application for taxpayer receipt and budget simulator. Would like to
Talk about it.
understand it a little bit better. And then other question is, it does say subject to specific appropriations. Is there an anticipation that appropriation is being made this year?
Okay, thank you for that question. So Section 5 really is Part 2 of Section 2. So Section 2 talks about creating this interactive taxpayer receipt web-based application and budget simulator. And Section 5 explains what that is. The taxpayer receipt simply will allow students, grades 9 through 12, to use an interactive system to see how their taxpayer money is distributed, whether it's from income tax, sales tax, alcohol, tobacco, motor vehicle, fuel tax. It will allow an estimation of taxes in different scenarios. And then Part 2 of this in Section 5 is the budget simulator. And again, it is trying to be an educational tool for students. For line 122, it does say July 1, 2025, and it is subject to appropriations. And so since it would not happen currently, that is why it reads in that way.
And just to follow up, you said grades 9 through 12, but I don't see that in here. Is there some place where
Yes.
it references high school?
So Section 2, it's already established in the code. So if you go to OCGA 20-2-142, it's for 9th through 12th grade.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so it is the education Christmas tree bill, but to just summarize, this bill does 4 things. One, endorsed by the chamber, the career readiness portion, because it allows soft skills, instruction, and training. The second piece is ESOL, just trying to give families in IEP meetings, children with disabilities, the advantage of having interpretation services. The third one is providing an avenue if a local school system is denying a youth group, based on how this is worded in the code. If they deny it, just putting that in writing, the denial. And then if you guys did choose to do Senator Setzler's amendment, is allowing school board members to, allowing local school systems to allow school board family members to have access to their insurance health plan.
Thank you, Representative, for bringing this Christmas tree bill forward. All good measures in it, in my opinion. Chair would entertain a motion. Got a motion, do pass, and a second. Now we'll take up the amendment. I'd like to move the amendment.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer AM 490160 to be added section-wise. And in the sequencing, I'd leave the council as to where exactly to place that within the bill. I don't know if the council wants to address that, but just give them discretion to put it in the most appropriate place.
I could go either way, if you'd like me to, yes. So you would be amending House Bill 282, LC 520561S. You would insert before to provide for related matters on line 12, the language there in the amendment at lines 3 and 4. Then you would insert after line 30, the following at line 6 through 25 of the amendment, and it would be section 1A.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll take a vote on the amendment. We got a second on the amendment?
Second.
All in favor, raise your hand. Passes unanimously. Now we'll take a vote on the underlying bill. We've got a motion and a second on that. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Passes 6-1. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee.
Please move it up.
And yes.
Yes, Senator Payne, that's correct. All right, moving right along to HB 51. Representative Perkle, thank you for your patience. You were here bright and early with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you for hearing HB 51. So this is one that that passed the House unanimously last year, passed this body unanimously, and it was in the queue on the floor in your body when it ran out of time. They blame me in the Senate in the last session. They blame me that one of my bills took a long time to get through, so I'll take partial credit for that. So HB 51, it's interesting sometimes how bills came to be. You know, what is the impetus for drafting this legislation? And it came from one of my school board members, a 10-year veteran on my smallest school system in the district and one of the smallest in the state. The school board member asked me, said, why can we not transport students when I've got 2 students to go to a chess club or FPLA? Why do I have to use a school bus? And I said, well, you don't. And he said, well, apparently you do. And I researched it, and sure enough, you do. So the underlying bill is one that came from a very, very small school system. But I got to tell you, I received so many positive comments from some of your school districts that said, I am so excited about this. Atlanta Public School Systems love it. Gwinnett loves it. So I thought this was going to be a rural deal, but it turns out it's needed all over the state. So this is a bill that the underlying bill deals with that, and so I'm going to walk through HB 51 on a broader view and not go line by line, if that is okay, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
So Section 1 simply allows GISA to be an affiliate member of the National Federation of High Schools, as they have been for over a decade. Now, that National Federation High School Association is the national sanctioning and rulemaking body for interscholastic athletics across the country. They promote best practices and safety for students. And so that is Section 1. Sections 2 and 3 are the underlying bill that I started with HB 51 that allows the transportation of students if the school system is okay with that. It allows them to transport them in something besides a school bus. There's strict safety measures in there. Vehicle has to be less than 10 years old. Capacity for no more than 8, no less than 5. Must be owned by the school system, so you can't, jump in the Explorer of the wrestling coach and go down to so there are procedures in place, but it's roundly well received by all the school systems that I have talked to. So the underlying bill and the friendly ad from Senator Robertson makes this a great bill.
In the addition, so just so the committee members know, this bill was vetted by us last year, was passed out, was recommitted back to this committee. And also, again, my esteemed Chairman Steele vetted this bill last week.
He did a great job, too,
Thank you.
to be honest with you.
And then Senator Robertson's addition to the bill, that was added last year, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
It
that
was.
was language from last year, not from this year. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Senator Setzler.
To the author, is there any reason we would have a strict line of 10 years old for age of vehicle? I mean, I can imagine right now if there's a 2013, 2012 model year vehicle that all of a sudden, I mean, this is, because these aren't suggestions or guidelines, these are hard lines. I mean, do we put that same thing on buses, or should we expand 10 to 15? I don't want to create a war across our school systems. I'm just saying, I mean, 10 years is a pretty bright line.
So that is currently what the guidelines are in place for. We can actually do this with IEP kids, with special education kids, and homeless kids, and those are the guidelines for them. And so we're just expanding the opportunity pool from just IEP and homeless students to, if the school system desires, to their clubs of 4-H and FFA and FBLA, to the small clubs, swim team. So this is what we have. That is the.
I don't want to create a circumstance where we make a little change in committee and now it's going to go back to the House for an agree. That creates more chaos. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just asking.
Well, I appreciate that.
Would there be value in just doing that?
Thank you. Any further questions from the committee?
Time appropriate.
It's appropriate.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to do pass on House Bill 51, and it's LC 460890S.
Second.
We've got a motion and a couple of seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator
your
Robertson has graciously agreed to carry this bill for me.
Are you sure about that?
Y'all want to reconsider?
I said that at the end. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate
Define graciously.
With that, we are adjourned. We'll see everybody at 2:30.
So can the baseball team jump in the back of the pickup truck with the 2:30?
Not anymore.